I hear the term small business. How do you define small business? How many employees would that be?
Well, I think there are different definitions for small business that are used by different organizations. But in Iowa, most of the businesses we have are small businesses. And you could put a number on that, whether it's 50 or fewer employees would be small business, or it could be 500. I don't know. I've seen different definitions from different groups. But I guess what I would look at is most of your Main Street businesses here in Clinton and the communities across Iowa would be small businesses. And a lot of the growth, a lot of the job growth comes from those small businesses.
Governor, I know that this is a way of developing economic development, but I think the tax break for the commercial end of it will help businesses like mine here to be able to continue onward and not have the burden of always trying to carry that load. So it's going to be a great way to maintain businesses.
Exactly. Well, and your point is a good one. We are losing many businesses like yours because the high cost, and in fact, we were in Newton and we held a several meeting like this in Newton, and the individual, I think, was a Domino's pizza franchise business. So he owns his business, but he's a franchisee, and he was saying the way his property taxes are and the way they've gone up, he would have to charge $30 or $40 for a pizza. So, and I know in the restaurant business or in the grocery business, it's a low margin business, and the high property taxes puts the business located in Iowa at a considerable disadvantage to other states where the taxes are much lower. So your point is right. If we're going to preserve existing business as well as attract new ones, this is critically important.
If this is going to save millions of dollars and bring in jobs, what's the opposition to your bill?
Well, the opposition, I think, comes from people that are fearful of the change. Change is always fearful to some people, and I guess and some of them might be the people that see a big windfall coming from this property tax increase and would like to be able to have that money to spend. And we're cognizant of, we need to make sure that what we have is balanced and protects local government, because we know all of the property taxes go to local government. And so the plan that we put, so I guess the people, and that's why I'm pleased that we've had a number of people that have been local officials that have worked with us in putting this plan together to make sure that we not only reduce the property taxes, and that's why we're doing it over an 8-year period, because we we want to make sure that we're protecting all classes of property, that as we reduce the commercial property taxes, we're also protecting the residential and the agriculture property. Those are bigger classes of property than the commercial, but they're all important to our state.
I come from local government background, so I mean there's a healthy dose of skepticism there, because the state in years past has not fully funded some of the mandates that they've required some of the local governments to participate in. But I tell you, that's one of the reasons I think it's been so important for us to not only do a 2-year budget, but in a 5-year budget projection also, so that we have the money in there going forward. So while I understand their skepticism, I have the opportunity to work with a governor that looks long-term and believes that this is the right thing to do. Everybody believes it's the right thing to do. We've been talking about it for 30 years. There's a discrepancy there. It is a barrier to growth in the state of Iowa. And the other thing is, so I think as we can start to eliminate that, there's a trigger in there too. I mean, we've got to continue to look at it as we move forward. We need to continue to look at mandates that some of the cities and the counties are dealing with. But there's a trigger in this, in our proposal, that if they're not bringing in the revenues that we're projecting, which are very modest, very conservative, then it allows us to elongate that out a little bit further. So we've tried to be very conscientious of the concerns. The money is in the 5-year projection based on very, very conservative projections. So between those things, the other thing that I think that's an important difference between the Senate bill and what's passed out of the House is ours is permanent and theirs is a credit, and we need it to be permanent as we move forward, so we can provide that predictability for businesses.
8 years from now, when the commercial is at 60%, where would the residential be?
Okay, that's a good point. I'm glad we would expect the residential will also be at about 60%.
What is it now?
Right now it's at about 50%. It's about 50%, and right now, under the present law, it'll go up 4% a year. So if in 8 years, you add 4% a year to 8 years, residential will be up around 75 or something like that if we don't cap it at 2%. And when it gets to 60, I think we then need to make sure that we stay in sync. That was the mistake that was made in the 70s when we tied residential and agriculture together, but we didn't do that for commercial and industrial. And this is going to take 8 years, but it'll get us into sync for all classes of property will be treated equitably.
It's not so much here in Clinton, but in the Quad Cities, they're doing a lot of repairing on the roads. It's good to create, jobs, but if those small businesses who carry the bulk of it are being affected by having to be shut down because people have to go a different direction, is the legislature now going to put in their plan, a budget to help small businesses where they're not? You create 10 and lose 10, you're right back to ground zero. So.
Well, whenever you improve roads, you go through a period of time where you have some inconvenience, but there's also some economic benefit to that as well. We need to be very careful, and we got a new director for the DOT, and in fact, we have a new member of the DOT Commission from here in Clinton, who is now a member of the DOT Commission, and the new director, Paul Trombino, is very cognizant of that fact. So in terms of the road, we want to make sure that, and some inconvenience when you're rebuilding a road is just going to occur, but we need to try to reduce the inconvenience as much as possible, and we need to do it as quickly as possible so we get it done and get it reopened, and so then that the businesses have the benefit of that. One of the things that Paul Trombino has done, he has reduce the amount of land that they're acquiring for many of these projects and trying to do it in a more efficient way. I asked him to find $50 million of administrative savings and elimination of duplication, and he's done that in this year's budget. And also because they did such a great job of repairing the road and bridge damage in western Iowa after the flooding we had last year along Missouri River, we're going to be able to move forward $128 million of road projects for this year. Now there is a concern down the road, and we had a task force called Transportation 2020 that looked at there's going to be a need for additional user fees in the future. I don't think there is a need this year, but there will be in the future, and that money does go back to the county, cities, as well as to the DOT to improve the roads. But a good transportation system will also help us grow the economy and bring more business to our state. We just need to make sure that when we're doing the repairs, we do them as quickly as possible, try to reduce the inconvenience, because otherwise businesses can go broke during that period of time if their business is badly interrupted.
You're paying taxes on empty buildings.
Exactly. I understand that, and that's something we've got to be very careful about.
Hi there, I'm Mary Wolf. I represent Clinton District 26.
Right.
Could you explain to us all a little more about where the money to make up for the lost revenue that the counties are going to experience, where that comes from, and what guarantees are going to be in place that money will be there 2, 3, 5 years down the road?
Yes, the Lieutenant Governor mentioned we put together a 5-year budget projection, and so as you know, last year we passed, for the most part, a 2-year budget. The big items like school aid and Medicaid we passed for 2 years, and we put together a 5-year projection, and we built in $50 million the first year, and then it goes to 100, then 150, and whatever, and it goes eventually $240 million over this 5-year period. And so we have that built into the budget projections that and then every year we're going to update that. So that's the way we're assuring local governments. We have that built into the budget, and obviously the legislature has to approve the budget, and we're hopeful that in the future we'll always do a 2-year budget so that we'll do like we did this past year, use ongoing revenue to pay for ongoing expenses. That was the problem before you came to the legislature, before I became governor again, but we had the legislature using all this one-time money for ongoing expenses like Medicaid, and the result was every year the legislature would convene and there would be projected hundreds of millions of dollar deficit. It's spend the whole session trying to figure out how to dig out of that hole. Well, we did that last year, so this year we don't have to go through that again. We have a budget that is balanced, and we have a budget that's sustainable for the long term, and we have built in the state revenue to replace that property tax money that's going to be reduced over time. The other thing that we have going for us in Iowa is this is an agricultural state. And because agriculture is doing well, our revenue is better than it is in a lot of other states. And that's an encouraging sign as well.
I know working for the city here,
Yep.
budgets are rough everywhere. A lot of our concern is that, you know, budgets are tough everywhere. It's just a fact right now that's going on. You know, with the M&E tax that was abolished back years ago, you know, there was this, we're going to give you money, we're going to give you money, and all of a sudden it stopped. And that's kind of the thought process now, is it's tough times now. We're already losing services and losing things that the city provides to us as taxpayers. You know, we always, as taxpayers, want the relief, but we also need the services provided, we need the budgets. What happens, you know, when your 8 years is up? Then where do we go?
Well, what we're counting on is growing the economy and bringing more business and jobs here, which is critically important for the success of this. And I think that if you look at the track, and I will say on the machinery and equipment tax, when I was governor, we did fund it. After I left office, you know, I guess it wasn't, they didn't maybe fulfill that or complete it. But if we had not done that, just think of this, if we had not done that, we wouldn't have the major investments you have in Clinton here with ADM. We wouldn't have the ethanol plants all over the state of Iowa, and there are 41 of them. We wouldn't have what's going on in Alcoa today, because if they had to pay an annual property tax on that equipment, which is huge, they just would have chosen other states, because most other states didn't have that tax. So we had to make ourselves competitive in that situation. And IPSCO, which also has, and I think it's SSAB now, they've been purchased by the Swedes. IPSCO was a Canadian company, but they've been good employers in Iowa, in fact, and they have added jobs, and so we want to keep them. And in fact, we're seeing a revitalization of manufacturing go on in our state, and one of the reasons for that is because that we've made these changes to be more competitive. And I think the commercial changes will also help many of our businesses. And we understand it's a balance, and we need to make sure that local governments are protected so that we have the resources to pay for fire and police protection and these critical things, protect the safety and well-being of our citizens. So that's why we work closely with local governments to assure them that, and we do have the 5-year projections and the replacement money included in the budget for those, to make sure that continues.
If it's not making the grade, do you plan on stopping with move forward, or?
What we would do, we have a provision in the bill that says if the revenue is falling short of expectations, then we delay it. So instead of 8 years, it may take 9 or 10. So that's the way that would be done.
That's a trigger.
It's a trigger it's automatically in the law that if revenue didn't meet expectations.
I think it's on a prorated basis too, so if some cities are seeing the revenue.
Right, that's the other thing, the reimbursement depends upon, so if you have something, for instance, West Des Moines, in talking about highways, they're going to put in an Alice's Road interchange out West Des Moines and Waukee, which is a fast-growing area. They're going to get all kinds of commercial development when they put that in, so they're not going to need the kind of reimbursement that other places in the state of Iowa would get. So we're going to prorate this depending upon where the growth is and where it isn't. So we want to make sure that we're treating all local governments equitably, and some are going to have more growth than others just because things like we just talked about with the transportation system, and where we do make these transportation investments and have these new interchanges and whatever, that's where we're likely to see the most of the commercial development, and a lot of it occur.
I think, as taxpayers, as all of us, we need to continually have the discussion about what property taxes should fund. What are the core essential services? what are areas that government is in that maybe they couldn't be in. And I'm not talking about consolidation on it, but I mean even a collaboration between city and county or IT. I mean, are there some things that you could do differently that would maybe allow us to more efficiently fund the core services that the property taxes are supposed to fund? So I think that's continuous improvement. That's something we need to continually look at to see what makes the most sense, how we can provide the most cost-efficient services to the taxpayers of Iowa, both at a state level and at a local level. And you know, sometimes it makes more sense for those services to be provided at a local level. I mean, we can do it more cost-efficiently than they can at the state because of the layers and the higher salaries. And sometimes mental health reform is maybe an example of it makes more sense for that to be paid for at the state level. So as citizens, we need to continually look at that process and find the most efficient way to do that so that we can be sure and provide those essential services that we need to.